Welcome back to Something Private, a podcast for Southeast Asian women by Southeast Asian women, exploring conversations around health, the self, community, and love. My name is Nicole, and I am your producer and host. Before we start off today's episode, I'd like to give a special shout out to our friends at MSDPharma, who spearhead It's Your Life, an educational campaign aimed at raising awareness about the importance of human papillomavirus prevention in Singapore. Thanks for teaming up with us on yet another episode. A while back, we did an episode with them titled My Mum and I Consult a Doctor About HPV, where we sought the help of our friend Dr. Narelle Kheng, a gynecologist, in answering some frequently asked questions about HPV. We also tackled some common non-medical questions that you guys had, like how do I talk to my mom about HPV prevention? And do I still need to go get vaccinated or go for regular screening if I'm in a long-term committed relationship? Tune into our episode, My Mum and I Consult a Doctor About HPV now. On today's episode, we're doing something a little different with a really special and influential person, Narelle Kheng.
Hi, I am Narelle. I am 27 years old and I'm a human being. Introductions are weird, right?
I know.
Yeah, but I should be really good at this, but surprisingly I'm not. But I guess, okay, so I'm more known as a music artist / influencer, I guess.
I always like to start off the episode with somebody who's influential. If I have anybody influential on the show, I like to ask them to share something private about themselves.
To just go straight in and break the ice, right?
That's right, exactly.
So I know today's topic is on sexual wellness, and we had this conversation earlier, and she asked me, and I was like, I don't think I am the right person to come to this because I am not the best. So I guess the thing that I wanted to share was the reason why I am, I guess, not that informed about sexual wellness, because it is quite a tough topic for girls. The private thing that I would share would be that I lost my virginity and it wasn't entirely consensual.
Okay.
So I think, and then after that happened, I didn't talk about it. I didn't do it again for a couple of years because I was very scared and very shocked. And I remember when it first happened, the first thing that came into my mind was, I need to get tested now. But I never did because I didn't know how. I didn't know what to do. And I think because of that, it kind of warped my feelings towards sex for a long time. I think after that, it started to be like, I felt like it was something that I had to be ashamed of. I couldn't tell anyone. So it took me a long time to be able to start approaching the topic. And I have a feeling that's kind of why I still avoid it in certain ways. Yeah. Something private for you.
I'm very overwhelmed.
Sorry, Dad.
No, thank you so much for sharing that. I think
it's important, I think, to this conversation.
Yeah, and I think that having you in particular share it, I think that is very meaningful. Thank you for
You're welcome. I mean, I'm happy to share it now, more than 10 years later.
How do you think that situation has affected, or has it affected? I mean, because you're sharing just now that it's one of your first few relationships, right? And I would assume that as a young person, one of your first few relationships kind of paved the way for your next
everything.
No, exactly. It sets the tone, right?
Yeah.
You always look back on the experience, the first few experiences that you've had. Has that impacted you? Has that impacted the rest of the relationships that came after that?
Okay, I mean, I did tell you I'm a serial dater. And I'm still the same. I still get super whenever I fall in love. It has not changed at all. But the thing that I have noticed now, looking back, was strangely my attitude towards sex became okay, so I mean, we don't really understand sex as a kid, right? It's either it's making love, or it's dirty, you know? So funnily, because I think that first sort of romantic kind of experience was somewhat taken from me, that my perspective towards it was it has to be wrong. So I started dating a lot of naughty boys. I will put it as that. And that became my way of dealing with it, you know? It's meet people who can love you, who can rewrite certain things in your life. I remember there was one point in time after going through quite a toxic relationship where I was I was just so confused, you know? I didn't know what love was. I don't know what it means. I don't know anything. And then there were these two guys in my life one of them is a typical like runaway, and then like they play the avoidant, and then you become anxious and you keep trying to text them. And then the other one was just there all the time, and it's a good guy bad guy thing. And I was talking to my friend, and she was like, go to the good guy. And I was like, why? It's like, oh, he's sunshine. And I had no idea what she meant, but I trust her with everything, so I went with it. And he was the one that actually started rewriting a lot of my understanding of what love was. So what was the question?
How did your first relationship kind of affect?
Yeah, I guess. So I mean, even though it kind of pulled me away, thankfully there were people that brought me back. And it wasn't something that I knew was happening at the start. But sometimes you have to follow your instincts. And I'm glad I did. Yeah.
I want to touch on one point that you said, which I found really interesting, in that, like, at the beginning you were talking about how when you go through an experience like that, which is quite an adult experience, I would say, it kind of shapes your perspective on like relationships, right? I think that's very interesting because, I mean, I guess that points at the fact that like there's no education or growing up, we don't really know where to look towards to understand like what romance is, or like what relationships should be like, or what safe and consensual and respectful boundaries.
Yeah, I mean, our sex education doesn't even begin to address any of these. Like, we only talk about put on a condom lah. Like, that's it, That's what I remember at least. I mean, on that point, just a quick sidetrack to the also very important topic of how there is no sex education for LGBT, which is even more difficult. Like, if we think that we don't have the understanding, like, this is so much worse.
Exactly. Yeah. But I mean, I just want to add on also that, like, I think that people are starting to realize this, and like the people in our generation have a lot of like ground up initiatives coming up on like Instagram, coming up on TikTok, on content that should exist, but there's a big gap or like a big vacuum in that space now. I guess since we're on the topic of like relationships, right? Yeah. I want to know, over the years, how have you kind of navigated like your own sexual health, since we the topic?
I avoid it.
This is so good.
I know. This why I was like, I'm the worst person to ask for this conversation. But maybe that's why you asked me. Scary lah, like. But recently, I mean, it has become a thing with like my friends, because there was a situation, and I mean, health. Oh my God, there was this quote I heard the other day. Health is a crown on a well man's head that only the sick can see. Yeah, it's a privilege that we take for granted. And I think generally my body has been quite healthy growing up, like, because I do sports and I'm active. And these are things that I just take for granted completely. So, I mean, I don't even take care of my physical health. I eat badly and all that. So I don't take care of my sexual health either.
When I mention the word STI, what is the first thing that comes to mind for you?
Sexual transmitted infection or disease.
And you know what is the most common sexual transmitted?
I mean, the first thing that I would think of is AIDS. And then somehow my understanding is the rest of it is kind of not so bad. And a good amount of people actually have it. And if you have it, then go get checked and get it treated, and it should sort itself out.
I just want to help Narelle out at this point. to make her seem more credible.
Okay.
I think the reason why, I mean, prior to doing this podcast, I also had like zero knowledge, I think, growing up. Similar to you, only after like a friend went through a certain health scare. I was like, oh my God, okay. She went to the hospital and then found out that she had herpes. And at that point of time, I was like sitting with her in the hospital, and I was like, babe, it's gonna be okay. You're gonna recover. Even though like I had no knowledge on like herpes, and I was like, herpes is something that stays with you for life. At that point of time, it's what
I think so.
Exactly, right? You kind of hear that, right? Yeah, I mean, just to give you some credit, I think that level of awareness is for whatever sexuality education we've had so far. I think that's very commendable already. But just want to let you know that HPV stands for human papillomavirus, and about 80% of sexually active men and women get that in their lifetime.
80%? So, how many people in the room?
Oh no, not in the room. So HPV is actually one of the most common types of STIs that can cause genital warts and cervical cancer if it's not vaccinated against and routinely checked for, which usually appears as a small bump or group of bumps in the genital area. You probably have seen, we have like a nationwide campaign that advocates for girls to get checked. So actually HPV is preventable, and that's why I think it's a very hot topic now. A lot of people might get in their lifetime when see. help from a doctor.
Can you just go to any doctor?
If you go and visit like a gynecologist or one of your general practitioners and tell them that, I want to do a checkup for HPV, they will be able to advise you on what are the next steps to take. So I think it's really just about taking that step to go and visit your doctor. I think that's the most important thing for now. I do want to kind of emphasize that, like, I think there's a misconception also with the whole idea of HPV that like only women can get it. And I think that's kind of what I want to highlight on this particular episode in particular, when we talk about like relationships and wellness and everything, that like men can get it too, and actually men are a very big part of this whole thing because it affects both men and women, right?
Yes, that's exactly what we wanted to say. Tell me if I'm wrong, but I feel like women to men don't really talk that much about these things.
Yes.
Like, okay, girls among girls, we do bring it up sometimes, but it's quite weird. Depends on who lah. But it's quite weird to talk.
No, for
to
sure,
men.
it's 100%
Do
weird.
men talk about it among
I
themselves?
have no clue. No, but it's actually
Asking the one man in the room, just vote yes or no. Do men? Men, they have their boy conversations.
No, but I feel like the men conversations, and I could be wrong, but like we go very differently from like women.
Okay, what do you think the
conversations.
difference is? Because you'd be like, oh my god, like I don't know what to do.
Yeah, but
right?
you know when a girlfriend comes to you, you'll be like, hey, like, are you okay?
Yeah.
Like, how do I help you? But the guys
I think
will be
actually my same lah. I think they'll be like, hey, how I don't know.
like,
Hey, chia bro.
I feel like even admitting that for them might be difficult, but I could be wrong. I don't know.
Yeah,
I feel like it might
depends
be
on the
more
man.
comfortable for, and I think this is in my own experience. Like if my male friend was struggling with their sexual health, they would actually come to like girls.
I was just gonna say, because my male friend came to me, and I know it was quite difficult for him. But yeah, I mean, I think men are often the ones that actually, correct me if I'm wrong, but transmit these things. Not that we're blaming men. It's
We are not
gender
blaming
equality
men.
for all.
There's a misconception that I think only women can transmit HPV because it's common knowledge that HPV in women can cause cervical cancer, but because men don't have a cervix, right? However, it can present itself in men as well. So it's transmitted through sexual activity, skin-to-skin, genital contact, and there are over 100 strains of HPV. I know, intense. But most of them are low risk, and there are at least 14 that are high risk, which can cause precancerous and cancerous cells. I think the point to note here is that both men and women can get HPV and transmit HPV. In fact, 80% of adults, both men and women, in their lifetime will be affected by HPV. HPV can also increase a man's risk of anal cancer and is responsible for 85 to 91% of anal cancer in general in men.
It's really quite bad. I met someone with anal cancer because I was working at SCS for a bit. So we went to visit the homes, and it's horrible. Like he was saying, basically it never heals because you're always infected. Like it's horrible. I know, I feel bad. Like
But-
I'm being Claire Dunphy right now. You know when she like smiles every time they mention dead people. It's just it's a self-defense because it's like it's awkward. It's not that
Correct.
Yeah.
No, but it's actually really bad. Like,
It's
if you
really
sit down and think
bad,
about it.
yeah.
Personally, really didn't know that that's what happened when you have.
Anal cancer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sounds damn
I
rough.
felt so bad. I didn't even know what to say because I was like, oh, I'm sorry. And
Correct.
Yeah,
correct.
like I just let him complain because he was just like, yeah lah, very pain lah, every day like that, you know.
Yeah.
And there's really like I can't say hey it's gonna be okay because what the hell do I know? And the worst thing, you know, is someone coming to be like, yeah, it's fine, and then I'm perfectly privileged and healthy. So just sit there and just nod lor. And I mean sometimes they just want someone to listen. Yeah.
So, Nora, I'm very curious. After meeting that man, did it change your perception on sexual health?
Well, I did not realize that they were related. I mean, anal cancer to me is anal cancer. I didn't think that HPV would lead. But so HPV, anal cancer in men or also women?
It's a good question. Gotta ask the experts. I'm not sure.
Both.
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 The experts say both.
Oh my god, I really.
There is currently no set way of testing a man for HPV because, you know, women we do it by either doing HPV tests or pap smears, but for guys they don't have a cervix, so there's no way of testing for
So how do they
HPV.
test then?
There's no way. That you can only know it if,
You give it to the girl.
unless it like shows like physical symptoms or like you give it to a girl and then she goes for the test. So I think the most important thing to note is, I think firstly to have the conversation with the men in your life, because you all could be passing it to each other and then nobody knows, right? And the second thing, to encourage like regular checkups with your doctor, be it if you're a guy or a girl.
Why is it always the women kena everything? Like contraception. Men, do your part.
No, it's true. But I think, since like technology, I guess, at this point of time is not as feasible for guys to get checked, then we both like have a part to play,
a part,
right? Yeah.
And also I think the education needs to be on men as well, because like it's quite tough sometimes when they don't have the knowledge and they're not there to support. It's very scary. The other thing that I was going to share, I feel like I'm not going to share it, but was also a situation with a guy, and I felt very lost because we had to go to the doctor and he was just completely absent throughout the entire thing. And that, if anything, that was the thing that stuck with me, was that I felt so alone going through all of this. And with my friend as well, and his girl is like, she's also lost. But men, because they don't see it, they don't have the effects, they don't feel it, it's so much easier. And I understand the need to be avoidant. Like, even as you're reading out all these things, that part of me is just like, just, like ignore, don't look. Okay, so the thing is that through my life, I've always wanted to go. In fact, when my friend like talked to me about it, I was like, if you need his STI situation, I was like, shall we go together? Because I also been wanting to do this forever, but scared lah. I mean, I think maybe we just need like a girl, like, go toilet, we go toilet, then everybody go get checked together. Yeah, I would feel so much more comfortable.
No, that's a really good idea.
Right? Yeah. Maybe we just need support groups.
Yep. My own experience, I feel like some of the horror stories that I've heard is that I've had a friend who, talking about testing, right? She has been with her boyfriend for a really long time, and this is she got checked prior to being with this boyfriend, but after 2 years of being with this guy, recently she tested positive for HPV. And it was really shocking because like, if they're both like monogamous and like exclusively seeing one another, right? Where did she get it? And like, how come it only showed up after? For my mom, she had like a health scare as well, but after speaking to her doctor, the doctor advised that she can get vaccination, like prevention. But what she does now is to go for her regular like pap smears to make sure that everything is all good in the hood,
Hope she's okay.
She's okay, she's doing well. With all this information that we have just like discussed, right? I'm wondering from now onwards, like, how are you going to manage your sexual health? I feel like this is like a me trying to
Mom. Okay, so here's the thing, right? It's like, okay, truthfully, there are so many things that scare us in general, right? Like, people warn you, like, you must save for retirement, like, get cancer, like, you eat this, blah, blah, blah. So, like, in general, like, I think that's where the avoidance comes from. When you receive a lot of news, it's easy to just ignore because we can't possibly mentally handle everything and protect ourselves against everything. So, but I do want to get it done. What works for me as a procrastinator is when somebody says, Narelle, here are the steps. Step 1, call this person. Step 2, book appointment. Step 3, like, say this. And then that's where it becomes much easier to follow because you take away the option of choice and you just move along. I would really, really love to say that I will go straight and get checked after this. And I will. Okay, maybe I will promise you within this year. There are 2 things I need to do. Get a full body checkup and get a sex health wellness checkup.
An STI check.
Thanks.
A full STI
Correct.
check. Yep.
Yes, and it will be done because now I have a bullet journal.
I will check back in, I'll be like, half a year.
Oh, jialat.
Hi, Narelle.
No, it's good. Chase me.
Just wanna know, have you done it? No, it's
We
good.
can go together.
I think it's good for girls to be accountable, friends to be accountable to one another.
Exactly.
I think
It helps a lot. Anybody else want to go?
You're all invited.
You're all invited.
That's the end of the sponsored segment. We're taking a short break. Something Private is a podcast produced under media publisher Our Grandfather's Story. Watch our new episodes every alternate Tuesdays on YouTube and listen to us on Spotify, Apple and Google Podcast every alternate Thursdays. New episodes will be published first on YouTube and we'll be publishing once every 2 weeks this season. We've also just launched our new website, so pay us a visit at somethingprivate.fm if you'd like to share your story with us or work with us. Otherwise, you can send us a message on Instagram at somethingprivatepod or email us at nicole@somethingprivate.fm. We're immensely grateful for all the support you guys have given us, and we really couldn't have come this far without you. If you'd like to keep supporting our work, become our Patreon at patreon.com/somethingprivatepod. That's patreon.com/somethingprivatepod. Now back to the episode. But I do want to touch on one aspect of you that I find really interesting. I think you have a list of accomplishments that you have achieved.
I'm already getting like...
She's like, uncomfortable, talk about sex, okay, but this I cannot. But yeah, I mean, you are really established, you have a really large following across like Southeast Asia and around the world in general. I want to know, I think, first of all, how do you feel about that? Yeah.
I was telling you just now, it's quite weird because I still don't feel it. Yeah, it makes me feel a bit uncomfortable and weird. But I also wonder why sometimes I have this dissonance towards it. And I do acknowledge that sometimes me not acknowledging it tends to create more miscom in my life, if anything. But the thing actually that makes me more uncomfortable about it is sometimes feeling like people expect you to bring, for example, a certain weight with you. Like even as you say, maybe it's imposter syndrome.
I was just gonna say.
Yeah.
But
I mean, I think naturally as a person, I always just like am more comfortable being an underdog and underselling because a lot of responsibility when people expect you to turn up all the time. Yeah. But I mean, of course, I don't want to sound like ungrateful. And I also do want to acknowledge that like sometimes it really is just luck. I mean, not to discredit like the work that is put in, but everybody works hard. Personally, sometimes feel like I don't, it's not a big deal. It's just a job. It's a job scope. Yeah.
I think it's very interesting how little credit you give yourself.
Okay, but you see, it's like I find people who, for example, like running like huge companies or if you're a part of something so much bigger, it's like to me what I do feels genuinely, honestly feels very small. I feel shameful because sometimes I feel like, you say, I'm so thankful you to be here, and I'm like, well, what if I can't bring, for example, listeners? Someone pays you to do something. I'm like, what if I can't bring you sales? Do I want to participate in that consumerist culture? And sometimes also maybe people like tend to see you only as that, and that's where I start to feel uncomfortable.
But I think to your credit, with the amount of like influence you have on like, for instance, like Instagram, I think is where a lot of like millennials and like Gen Zs exist on, right? You do use, I guess, your influence for lack of better word, good, right? You are very vocal about issues that matter to you, and I think that
let's put it in our perspective.
Yeah.
Good.
In our perspective, yeah. But it is. To give you credit, it's not easy because I think that you have been a very big advocate for like mental health. Coming on here to talk about sexual health, I think is not something that everybody with your size of influence will do. They'll be like, I think that ruins like image, firstly, and secondly, that like I don't want to reveal that aspect of me, even though I know like that might have some good on the people who follow me or look up to me, right?
It is quite uncomfortable sometimes, I guess, talking about stuff like that. But not anymore. It's just a hurdle, I guess, to get over.
Why do you choose to talk about like these specific things? I think in particular like mental health.
Okay, so mental health for me was a bit more like bo pian lah, because at that point, like I'm so used to sharing, and my job is to share parts of my life, and the dissonance I felt for so long was because, for example, like there are influencers that just share about their life from the start, but for me it was like half that and half more mainly music, right? And in music it's quite different because it's like your music videos, you put on you in so much makeup, like it's all about presenting an image, like putting on a show, quite literally. But then that I would feel so crappy because every time you go to an interview, you're supposed to smile, but inside I'm feeling so shitty. And I had to talk about it because I had no choice. Like it was the only thing I was thinking about, the only thing that was consuming my life. And I'm glad I did because that made me feel so much better. And it made me feel a lot worse also. But in those moments, like I have this folder on my phone that's called This Is Why. And I screenshot every time someone thanks me for talking about certain things. Because just to remind myself like, okay, it's still worth it. But every time I share something after that, I just like but it's still fun though. I mean, I guess sometimes it's fun to approach it in terms of like as an experimenter, if you can detach in that way, to be like, I'm exploring vulnerability and what that means. And I think what I learned also was to not be so precious about the things that you've done in your life. Like, for example, even if like I massively like screw up, so be it, live and let live, and just keep improving and just learn from it.
Do you have an example of what that like looks like?
I think understanding that we're all a spectrum. There's this quote that I heard it from this guy called Jay Shetty. The quote was, "You are not as good as they say that you are, and you're not as bad as they say you are." That's it. I was like, okay, I'm just me. I'm just trying my best. And I feel like if we can exercise that just with everyone, it's like how they say you judge yourself based on your intention and others on their action. So just judge everyone on both lah. Just don't judge lah. You know, I'll just recognize that like everybody is trying. Also, like so many times where I've said really dumb things on stage, you know, or dumb things in interviews. And I used to also hold a lot of like shame from that, because right now I'll say something and then they'll be like, shh, you know, like, oh, what? So I was kicking her. You can't hear it on the podcast. Yeah, you know, I'll get nudged out or dragged, like someone pinch me, you know, and then that made me think like, why is it that we can say some stuff and not some stuff? And then I mean, I guess that's the whole conversation you get into of like political correctness as well, which I also am trying to understand exactly where it should be, because I don't know where I stand yet. Like, you know, I understand why we shouldn't say certain things, but I also understand that some things need to be talked about. Also, like, again, overprotective parent is not healthy in general. The fact that we are just talking about it and thinking about it is enough. Yeah.
I think it's very interesting because I think that you are, like every one of us, right? You go through these things also, like making mistakes and everything.
In fact, I think I make way more mistakes than most people because I'm a bit of a dumbass, which I told you just now.
You really gotta give yourself more credit.
I don't say it in a cynical or spiteful way. Like I if you know tarot, like there's this card called the Fool, and basically like the card represents this guy who's kind of just like almost walking off a cliff but being very happy, and it's not a negative sentiment. It just means that you are willfully exploring life, and that's kind of just how I choose to view things, because I can also be quite the overprotective parent. I'm a worrier, ruminator, you know, and that's exactly why I try and fight against it, because I rather have a see where this takes us kind of mentality. Yeah.
How do you learn to, I guess, like take things in your stride? Because I'm guessing that must have been a process for you, right?
Yeah, from falling a lot, you know, and I'm still learning how to fully adopt it into my stride. Like, for example, if last time you fall, then you say, okay, I'm not going to try again because I don't want to fall. Then now I just fall and get up and say, painful, never mind, wipe it off, it's okay. And I think now I'm at a point where I'm trying to remind myself that I am actively making this choice. And as long as you choose it, then nobody can say anything really, ma. Then you just go and deal with it lah. So I mean, that's a conversation between the two voices in my head. So when the shameful part comes out and like who gets scared, who gets anxious, and then I as the adult also have to come in and say, it's okay, and you made this choice and you made it by thinking through it, and this is a conscious decision as an adult.
Does that mean that, like, let's say all the stuff that you currently stand for, like quite openly on your platforms, right, are these things that you personally feel a lot for? Because I know that besides like mental health, you do talk about recently you've been more
in general, yeah.
opinionated.
I mean, you know, sometimes you say like, oh, you fight for nothing, like what are you going to do, change, but it's not about that. It's like the fact that there is a voice is enough, because there needs to always be something pushing back against, so that we can maintain some kind of equilibrium. As of now, I still don't know fully where I stand, and there's some times in my life where I have the emotional capacity to care more, and there's some times where I just can't, and that's fine too. Like, I don't have to be out there every day like posting, because I haven't posted in a while, because genuinely I'm trying to figure out again where I want to stand on certain things, and I'm still learning. Yeah. But okay, so I was speaking to a therapist, and she said like most women, 80% of the girls that she meets, right, they all think that they're weird, and they suffer from like not being able to love themselves. And I think if anything, just love yourself. Like that's it. Like once you have the confidence and the compassion, there's really nothing that you can't do in your capacity, you know what I mean? It's just that most of the time we are our own villains. So just stop it. Like I know sometimes I don't know if you do that too, but it's like an instinct that comes out that you just self-hate because.
Yep.
I don't know why.
Yep.
Why do we self-hate? Because precautionary, maybe, right? Like that's what anxiousness is. It's like it's meant to protect you from hurting yourself. You can love yourself and not be self-serving. You can love yourself and not be selfish. You can love yourself and equally love others just as much. Because like the idea of self-love is so often met with like egotism, but it's very, very distinctly different.
I don't want to make it a gendered thing, but it does feel very much like a gendered thing. I feel like women often find it more difficult to be kind to themselves, or like to put themselves at the forefront of things and to tell themselves, or I think they're very self-critical in general. And this is something that I think upon reflection, or like sitting with friends, having conversations that are slightly more introspective, we realize that every time we want to pursue something, it's always like, but like I don't deserve this, you know, I don't think I'm good enough to, for instance, like ask for a raise, for instance, like to want something, to be able to say that I want to do this, you know. Yeah, I think I
still struggle with that so much. I mean, you can tell. Yeah, even the fact that we're always apologizing, always afraid to take up space. It's a human thing. Everybody experiences it. But the only person that can really fix it is ourselves first, right? Like, we can't go out and fix the world if we haven't understood that internally. Maybe that's why I also take breaks, because I need to come back and remind myself. Every time I am on my own, I feel like I can reach that kind of solidity. But it's when we go out into the world where you keep meeting forces that stand against that, your walls tend to keep getting broken down, right? Just keep standing back up.
I'm wondering if there's any last bits of wisdom that you have to impart.
Okay, I think that we have the power to speak our truth into existence. So whether that be self-love, whether that be friendship, or whether that be sexual wellness, the things that we talk about and continuously talk about become real. And we have that power, if not anything else. I've been watching too much Marvel.
WandaVision.
Yeah, so good. Yeah.
No, it's good. I think it's very good advice.
Yeah, and it's, I mean, that's the truth. It's like, even though I know in the back of my head, for example, get checked. If I don't talk about it, I will not get it done. But the more we talk about it, the more I'm like, oh, actually, just go lah. Yeah.
Same with self-love, right? Like,
Same with
you were talking
self-love.
about it just
If
now.
you talk negatively to yourself, that will come into existence. But if you talk positively to yourself, that will come into existence. Yeah.
Thanks a lot for coming on the show, Narelle. Hope you learned
I did. I really enjoyed it. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you.
Big love for this podcast.
Big shout out to our friends at MSDPharma for teaming up with us to educate you guys on human papillomavirus prevention and awareness. To find out more about HPV or to find a clinic, head over to itsyourlife.sg. That's itsyourlife.sg for more information.